We're ready to get started here with elevating FP&A through collaboration. Today we're going to do a demonstration of the Paris Technologies platform, and I'd like to introduce to you our panelists. We have John Florio and Gareth Jones, both FP&A experts of 20 to 30 years. So they are here today to share their experience with you and to demonstrate the Paris Technologies platform and what it can do for collaborative FP&A. So I just want to give you guys a quick recap of what we did in part one, and that was a focus on business partnering. And we talked about the ABCs of business partnering, and that was aim to assist, which basically comes down to ask yourself, how can I add value? And you can ask yourself, why is this task being requested of me from leadership? And challenge any assumptions that you make about that thing. Like find out the why behind what you're doing, and it will lead to a better outcome. So that's about aiming to assist. The B is in the ABCs of business partnering is to build a clear box. And this is about transparency. It's about not having FP&A secret sauce in a black box. It's about sharing and never having a grand reveal. What John taught us last time was no grand reveals. You don't want to be surprising anybody with the information that you're uncovering. And the C of the ABCs of business partnership was to close the loop. So closing the loop means to connect the numbers that you come up with to an action plan of some kind, or making a story so that it's contextualized within what you're saying and it helps to improve the communication. So closing the loop is saying, so what? I have this data, now what? So connecting it to action is super helpful, and also to communicate early and often to keep everything going. So there's a quick crash course in business partnering. And from here, I'd like to move on to a little bit about FP&A, the core things and what they do. So I'm going to pass it off to John here.
Thanks, Jess. Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what FP&A teams do, and why you need an FP&A department. And then as we talk through that a little bit, we're going to work our way up to the budget. The two most important things to look at when you're actually looking at this particular slide is, number one, the fundamental goal of an FP&A department is to act as a bridge, right, between the business teams and the leadership. Now, some of you that are out there that are FP&A probably want to jump off that bridge every once in a while, but you guys need to know you're the linchpin that keeps everything together so that everyone can understand. How's it done? It's done by collecting information from the various business and functional teams. Ties back a little bit to our part one on the ABC, because if you're partnering as a business, it's not just the collection of that information. So some of what Gareth's going to show you with our product today is just the ease of use of collecting that information. Many of you that are out there today, if you have 40 different departments, are probably sending out 40 different spreadsheets. And then when you're getting that information back and collecting it, you're then forced to cobble together 40 different spreadsheets into some sort of consolidating look at what your budget will be. We're going to show you today, as we move through this process, the simple ease of how that 40 spreadsheets can become one. And you'll see a little bit more of that. Now, after you get through the simple pain of what Excel does when it comes to that sort of thing, the most important thing that FP&A teams do is they analyze that information so that they can present it to senior management and help make a better business decision. This is why we all took this job, right? Everyone that's sitting out here right now can easily respond to the fact that when they took this job, they were told they were going to analyze information, and they were told that they were going to help senior management make better decisions. Although it's not what our poll question is right now, how many of you guys are sitting out there right now and you can just nod along saying, I never even get to that. Mostly I just bring all my stuff together in Excel. I'm racing to try and get information together, and I don't really know. And even if I'm business partnering, I never get a chance to really analyze that information. Garrett's going to show you the ease of which of analyzing that information as well. So kind of how we do it. All right. So how does an FP&A team do this? Well, number one, they're going to provide some financial insights and they're going to provide analysis, right? So let's talk through a little bit about the way it works. Those of you that are not FP&A, now you're going to get a little insight into how that comes across. First off, the most important thing is to pull last year's information through, because what better way to understand how I'm going to budget this year by knowing what my results were last year? So you're going to pull that information into your Excel template, wherever it is that you do that information, Google Sheets, whatever it might be. You want to get last year's information. And when you have last year's information, it allows you as a department leader, or what we like to call a budget collaborator, some people call them budget contributors. You're going to sit down with last year's information and you're going to say, hey, how much is last year true to what I think is going to happen next year, right? So as you're working through, and again, those of you that don't know that are joining on, most of this starts to take place in September or October of your current year. So as you get there, you're kind of putting your information in to say, okay, I'm looking at my 9 or 10 months worth of actual data, and I'm trying to get an understanding for what next year is going to look like. And it's kind of a bit of a moving target, but you've got 9 or 10 months worth of actuals, and you're kind of forecasting out the rest to say, okay, I've got 9 months of what I think is real, and I've got 3 months of something that I think is upcoming. And that's pretty much how I'm going to build up my budget. But when you look at last year's information, you may know for a fact that certain things are changing. And the company wants more growth out of you on the sales side. Or the company knows that it's going to have some changes in the labor workforce and things that they are going to have to contend with. So you're going to have to budget and make those changes and think those things through. As part of the business partnership, what you want to be able to do is you want to make that less cumbersome as an FP&A member for those collaborators or contributors to work with. So by bringing last year's information in, you've got it, but now you're going to sit and review with those department heads, and they're going to enter this year's budget. And so part of what Gareth is going to show you is he's going to actually show you a little piece of budget, and we're going to pretend that we're budget collaborators, you know, kind of working together so that you can look at that information and actually see where it comes from. Because one of the biggest problems that we have collectively as a group, especially in FP&A, and even more so in accounting, is what we think is obvious and what we take for granted are things that your contributors to the budget simply don't see as obvious. They see that as a challenge to understanding. So our job in the business partnership is to make sure that they're moving along with you. And again, Jess talked about it in the recap. We don't want a grand reveal. That's the last thing we want, right? We're not reading a thriller novel where we're looking for the twist at the end. We're actually looking to understand and forecast, you know, what's happening and what's going forward. So we need to make sure that we're gathering and analyzing that data so that we can evaluate that performance. And what we want to do for you in the FP&A role is we want to switch you to someone who's now deep diving into information, looking at that analysis and not jumping, well, this was a staffing problem, so I need to understand what happened. I'm going to go to my HRIS system. This is something that happened. Oh, I'm looking at a bunch of invoices and I don't understand what it is. I'm going to jump to my general ledger or my ERP system. All of these things keep you from getting your job done because you're going to all these disparate places to gather information, probably running reports, probably exporting them to Excel, and then probably doing a lot of massaging in the back just to hopefully get to the answer to the first question. And we all know what's lingering after question 1. It's question 2, right? So as soon as you've got that answer and you think that you're making your boss happy, he's not content and he's already asking about the next problem that he saw when he was looking at that stuff. So you've got to get empowered to be able to look at that information faster and allow them to make faster decisions. So part of what we're going to talk about is the ability to adapt on the fly. So the goal when we look at this stuff together is to make sure that the data that we're using is going to help the business team and the leaders understand how to improve the financial performance, and it's going to find opportunities for growth and help manage the risk. So What's the goal? Ensure both business teams and leadership are making an informed decision based on a solid understanding of the organization's financial position. This is a problem whether you're a $10 million company and you're in that growth mode, or whether you are a Fortune 50 company. We have dealt with both, and it's amazing to see how quickly everyone's trying to adapt so that they can grow and make the right decision, but how slowly the tools that are provided to them help them move with that decision. So oftentimes they're already behind on something that they may have wanted to be able to look at. Our job as that bridge is to somehow find a way to understand that, be able to analyze faster, and deliver quicker information. That's the goal. All right, so the first thing we want to be able to do to ensure that goal is facilitate the communication and the collaboration as we go. So FP&A teams are going to work closely. They're going to work with both the business teams and the leadership to understand the needs and priorities. This takes us back to our part 1 webinar. We want to assist them. We want to understand what's the priority and what do they foresee is going to happen in 2025, in 2024, whatever they're building up their budget for. And then we want to promote communication and collaboration by being neutral. Our job's not to pick a side. We're not on senior leadership side. We are not on the collaborator side. Our job is to bring together different perspectives. And again, back to something that Jess touched on earlier. We don't want to be in a situation where the person who's contributing doesn't have an idea of what the end goal or end result is going to look like. It's got to be transparent across the board. So what we want to do is we want to talk about how FP&A teams can make it a little easier for business teams to collaborate and talk through with leadership about any sort of budget issue. So one of the things that Gareth and I are going to show today, it's going to be a little bit exaggerated, is we're going to show an exaggerated example of a budget issue and show you just how quickly that can get resolved. And we're going to show you that inside of our product because of its dynamism and the ability for it to move quickly, right? And this is going to bring different people together. Because when everybody's looking at something and now we're analyzing instead of bringing everything together and cobbling it all together, now we're working together on, oh, wow, I see a discrepancy. What could this be? How can I evaluate it, look at it, and make sure that we're there? So last of all is we want to make sure that we're ensuring alignment. We want to make sure that the finance function is going to support the business goal and the objectives by providing access to the necessary financial information and support, right? So what does this really talk about? This talks about building trust and cooperation between the leadership business and the finance teams. I just want to stop and take a breath there because trust is the big one, right? It's probably the biggest thing of them all. In our first part, I spent a little time, and so did Gareth, talking about our previous lives where we were pretty much dictated to as to what the end result had to be from senior leadership. And before we formed partnerships in our respective roles with the business, we wound up in a situation where we would just kind of take last year's information from the collection and gathering standpoint, throw a bunch of information in and plug that data so that it got senior leadership where it needed to be. Well, number one, senior leadership isn't trusting it because your budget's probably worthless 10 minutes after you did that. Number two, the guys who you just buried, those business collaborators, the guys that are running that department, the guys that are walking the floors every night trying to figure out how they can make their department grow and do the things that they have to do, they don't trust you anymore either, right? So now you've got a huge problem. So once you go into the business partner mode and you start talking about how you're going to do that, you've got to make sure that there's a trusted relationship there. And that's the reason why I want to pound that trust. And your actions are going to speak so much louder than your words. And so we've got a little bit of a triangle that we like to bring up, and we talk about it often here in our office, and we talk about it with prospective customers all the time. And that is, the triangle is going to be kind of the marriage of budgeting, forecasting, management reporting, but you'll notice that in the center is the business partnering. Yeah, you can collect that data for the budget. Everybody can. And like I just said, but you're not adding a trusted relationship with anybody because you're just kind of forcing them into a number you decided it's going to be. Let's play a rewind there. I've got a last year number, and my boss tells me I want sales to grow by 10%, and I want expense to grow by 5%. This is 15 minutes worth of work for all of us Excel gurus. We're just going to go in and plug it. We're going to take last year's data and we're going to grow 10% and we're going to push it across the board, and we're going to have no conversation with the sales team, no conversation with understanding what's changed based on maybe even consumer price index. Things cost more money. We have no idea what's really happening with expense. No idea if we're in product or retail business, what we're hearing from the business that are running various stores. No idea if we're in a professional services business, like whether we're in an accounting role. We don't understand, are we able to get those people out the door when we're doing their taxes, when we're doing, any of those items? What are we billing? We don't have any idea whether you're a law firm or not. We're just plugging. And therefore, you've got a problem. So now, when the business partners come in and you talk through everything, you start to understand that. You have those valued conversations, and they start speaking back to you. John, I just can't grow sales 10%. Like, you could tell me to grow sales 10% all day long, but I'm going to tell you why we can't. Okay, we still got to find a way to get revenue up by 10. Let's start working on something together that we think is workable for you. And I can go bring that back to senior leadership after we take a look at it so that we can understand. And that's the left side of our triangle. That's where business partnering works on the budget side. We freeze that budget and we get comfortable. Okay, now the year starts. I don't even have to go back and talk to you about 2020 with COVID. You might as well have taken everybody's left side of budget and tossed it right in the trash, because as soon as COVID hit, there was a dramatic change. If you were not forecasting, you had no idea what was going to happen to your business or where it was going to go, because revenue for the most part stopped. Employees couldn't come into the office. You're still having to pay rent. And that is a traumatizing and dramatic effect. But that hyperbole is out there for you to understand how important it is to continually forecast. Now, the left side of the budget, and you work together. And let's go back to our part 1 webinar. Hey, we talked all about this, but if you don't keep working with them on the forecast so that you can understand what's changing, now you've lost their trust yet again, because you got their trust on the budget. You worked together. The budget got approved. Everyone did a great job. You're solid, and the year starts. And as soon as January closes, you need to look at 1 month of actual and 11 months of budget. And what you have to do is say, oh man, I thought we were going to have a way better month in January than we did. Now, all of a sudden, my numbers look different. What can we do? So let's draw that imaginary arrow again back to the business partnering and collaborating. What can we do together to forecast this information so that we know? And so that we're aware and helping with that change. In fact, with our tool, and what Gareth is about to show you, is you can actually maintain your own forecast going forward. So if I'm the head of a particular department and I've got the template, I can start working on when my month closes for January, February, March, and April. I've got 4 months of actual, and I've got my forecast that's rolling. I can take a look at that, and I can make the changes that I need to. I can create the comments that are necessary. And now John, who's in charge of FP&A, he's going to see that. He's going to work along with me. But it allows senior leadership to now have way more insight into the changes that are occurring based on the reforecasting that we're asking the various collaborators to do. That is absolutely game changing when it comes to the trust side. So now again, looking at that triangle, and let's stay focused on it, right? Business partner is almost like the evil eye in the middle. We're the guys now working with the collaborators and they love us. We're able to do budgeting. We're able to work with them on the reforecast, but we still don't have that trust of senior leadership all the way through. Hence the bottom or the base of our pyramid, the base of the triangle. This is where management reporting becomes so crucial. All of you are out there doing management reporting every single solitary day, and you're advising on actual versus budget or actual versus forecast, and you're looking at a variance, and they're trying to look at something with which they have no understanding for why it's doing that. So what are they doing? They're yelling back at you, the bridge, right? They're coming back to you, oh king of FP&A, and saying, why is this happening? And you've got this opportunity to take a look at that information so they can see the real presentation, right? And we talked on our last conversation, we talked in depth about they want to be able to see actionable insights and be able to make changes. And they all asked for and they bought these really expensive dashboards from all these really expensive pieces of software. But they can only look at, if you're looking at an HR dashboard, you can just look at HR. It's going to tell you some information, but it's not pieced together with finance. And you can go over and you can look at sales and you could say, okay, I see what John's providing me on the P&L from a management standpoint. I see sales, but I'm only looking at the dashboard on sales. And coincidentally, it doesn't really tie back to the ledger because the sales number is always a little different. As a sales guy, I can tell you I'm always kind of puffing up what the number's going to be versus what it really is, right? Gareth is over there policing me. So you've got this problem, as well. So you've got all these disparate places where you're looking at something. And so management reporting really needs to bring the enterprise together. Why not have something that's able to bring all that disparate information together and allow you to view a dashboard that brings it all into one box? And so then management reporting starts to see it, and we're going to demo that for you right now. But what you're going to see is when something changes, they can be alerted, they can understand what's going on, and they can move fast. True actionable insight to make that decision. And so to close it out, before I turn it over to Gareth and we start demoing, to close it out, effectively, you've built the trust with management reporting. They understand and believe you're giving them that old cliche of that one source of the truth. You've built the trust with your collaborators. Hey, John's not going to screw me. He's not forcing my budget to be a certain number. He's not making me go a certain way. And not only that, I've got control over my forecast. I can start looking at numbers and building those numbers up. And now I understand more. And I'm ready to be able, so when I look at information, I understand exactly kind of where I am. So that kind of is exactly what that storytelling that I just gave you in this first part is what you're now going to see happen through Excel, live and dynamically created to an engine that's sitting in the back that's able to pull disparate sources of information at one time and keep it in one place and have it update however frequently you would like it to update. And once that information's back there, we're not going to get all technical and show you that stuff. We're going to show you how the business collaborator works together to bring that information together. And then we're going to show you how senior management responds to information that gets put through. So if you need to take a sip of coffee, I need to take a quick sip of water, we'll have Gareth share his screen and we'll make this thing go.
I'll jump in real quick about the polls. I see you guys have been answering them, and I'm going to take a second to leave this one up here so you can participate in the one that's up right now as Gareth starts. And when we end, I will share the results with everybody.
Excellent. Thank you, Jess.
All right.
Okay.
John,
go ahead, Gareth.
are you seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we're gonna sort of demonstrate how we could use this tool to build up a budget. As you can see here, I've got some filters, and I'm filtered on the budget version, and I'm in a single office in a single department. And at any point in time with this tool, I can just change these filters and look at a different region and a different department. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically distribute the exact same template to all of my budget contributors, and I'm going to ask them to work with me to complete them. And we can show you at the end, John, but you know that as people are contributing, the tool is already consolidating. So there's no second step. All I need to do is contribute, and I'm going to have my answer ready.
So,
All right, how
before
can
you
I?
show,
Yeah, go ahead.
so before you show that, so let me just take a pause. So I tie back to the things we talked about. So this is a perfect example of that original stuff that I was talking about, where you're sending out 40 templates and you're getting 40 templates back. Gareth has already made that go away. If he hit that drop down on Washington, DC, as an example, if we had 40 different departments out here, you'd see all 40. Which literally means everybody is working off the exact same product, doing the exact same thing, but none of your Excel functionality is going away. If you want to do some calculations off to the side, you could do them. If you wanted to be able to do other things, you can, and we're going to show you that kind of as we move along. But I want to make sure we're tying the narrative of the story back to some of the demo that Gareth is doing so that you understand that. Go ahead, buddy. Sorry.
No, I was just so what I've done here, and this is fairly typical. We've kind of given everybody a baseline, and then we're going to ask them to sort of give us value input. So it's just like Excel to start with. I can just sort of start sort of typing some numbers in here, and I can drag those numbers across. So I'm using, or I can just sort of, I might have a number that's sort of in another workbook that I've had, or something of a discussion we've had. I can just copy that in, and I can use any of Excel's paste. And as soon as I paste that data in, it's loading it into my centralized database in the cloud. So very, very easy functionality. But as you know, potentially, even that is going to be too slow and cumbersome. So I'm going to leave some opportunities here to do things in an even quicker way, and we call them spreads or accelerators. So one of the most obvious is I could just set a number for the whole year. Now, if you think about how quickly I could do that down multiple lines, I can really update this data really quickly. You mentioned that I might want to leverage what's happened in the past, and that's very common. And I can just put a factor against the last year number, and I can update my whole line with last year's data. And something that I see quite a lot, or I personally used a lot, was the last year even spread, especially in expenses. Now, maybe in my demo, it's not so obvious, but very often in expenses, they can be a little lumpy, especially if your team isn't doing their accruals well. I might get 2 payments in a month, depending on if it's a 5-week month or a 4-week month or something, and then nothing in a following month. And when I want to come and update my budget, I might want to just take my expenses and run them evenly across the month. So a nice spread like that. And then finally, I might have something, and maybe I can pick other revenue. I can do something if I know that it's relevant to another line, and the most common is obviously something like revenue. I can pick something like this, and I can say, well, this is usually 2% of revenue because it's some kind of interest expense or something like that. So those are just some really nice examples of how easy it is to get data out to people, and then let them update this really quickly, and then give them some tools that helps them think about their data. Now, you might notice this one, John, is a little different. I didn't give myself any options here to update this, and because I'm going to do it by line. So kind of default with our tool is you can do things at the top level because it might be nice and simple for you. But at any point, you can just pick any expense line or revenue line and go into a little bit more detail. So here's one that I've gone into a little bit more detail. And what I wanted to do here, and obviously we're building this up in the demo because I'm going to show you something. But here I've broken my sales and marketing down into some sort of obvious separate categories. Now, just to show you here, this is kind of free form. The contributor could just fill these in quite nicely. And here I've got a comment section, and I can put in any text I want. Something like that. So I can capture a lot of comments with my budget, which is really, really useful. And as soon as I move away from my, it sticks with my budget. So another contributor will be looking at something completely different. And of course, they won't see any of this. But as soon as somebody wants to look at my stuff, all my comments are going to come with it. So, it saves me, potentially saves me writing a lot of emails if I'm making nice comments about all my assumptions. And of course, it's a reference for me in the future if things don't go quite according to budget. All right. So next step, John.
Yes, good. Let's jump back to our menu page, and let's take a look at our working forecast. And so what I wanted to do was just talk through a little bit of, if you're thinking about our triangle that we put up, that's building up your budget. You're doing that across multiple departments, and then what we only touched on it briefly, but there's also offices underneath those departments. So depending on how detailed you want to be, you can be. The product's flexibility allows you to have as many levels as you would like to have, or as your company has. It could be a simple roll up just at the company level, or it could be broken out by department. So in this example today, we're showing a demonstration of a professional services firm. So the key product for a professional services firm, obviously, is the people. And so, what you want to be able to do is you want to understand, what are the value of revenue that the people drive, and what is the cost of those people, right? So Gareth, let's jump over there just for a minute, just so that everyone can just take a look at the flexibility, how it's not just an income statement, how it's, anybody that's working in their department has to be able to understand their various costs of their various employees and the things that they would want to take a look at.
Yeah, and I think, John, as you mentioned, this is a professional services demo, but the reality is just about every business out there, their largest cost is payroll, and being able to forecast your payroll by the individual member and being able to do that at scale and really quickly is very powerful. So here's just a real simple idea, just to show you that, we've basically got someone who's got hours and a rate, giving us their sort of monthly job cost, and then these additional payroll taxes giving us a total cost. Now, I'm just showing some very simple functionality here today within the demo, which is that very often you want to be able to change where someone's not going to be here. You want to be able to show that in the calculation that they won't be here. So something as simple as that. Now, as you can see now, we're starting to move into this forecast section. So here, this is actual data that's coming from our payroll system. And then I'm going to continue that forecast until something changes. So here I can do a termination, and I can do it in any month. And then, of course, the other most common thing is if someone takes a leave of absence for paternity or maternity leave, I want to be able to show a little gap, and something as simple as that. I'm just putting in 3 little data points, and I can have this working really simple. It's a very, very simple concept, but very powerful. Now
the most important thing, but what I want to make sure that we illustrate here, Gareth, and I know that you're doing just a one-off, and obviously nobody works in a one-off fashion, but what I think is really key here is I spent a good amount of time talking about disparate information, and let's just say I'm working on my forecast now, and I find out that Robert De Niro has decided that he's leaving the company. And he's leaving the company, as you had first put in, let's just say he's leaving the company as of July 1st. So we're going to terminate him, and everything's going to be gone. And you'll notice that the sheet's updating. Yeah, great. I can do that in Excel all day long. What I want to throw back at the accountants so that they understand, and the collaborators that might be on the call, is can you jump to our income statement on this for me? I'm sorry to make you jump around. For those of you that don't know, I make Gareth do this stuff on the fly all the time.
Yeah, now I've just got to make sure I get to the same intersection. So I believe he's in litigation in Chicago.
He's Chicago, I think, yeah.
So there we go.
Now I think what I want to show you here is, and this is for those of you that are accounting that are out there, and those of you that are eager to learn. I often talk about what Gareth is about to illustrate for you as if it were like a subledger. So as an example, those of you that are paying payables, you're never making an entry into your income statement. It's actually just providing it for you automatically. It's a sub ledger. We call these, this is a sub module. So this, see how it says over on the left-hand side by staff for that direct labor? You can't change those numbers. They're coming in from another area. Okay, where are they coming from? They're coming from what we just saw Gareth doing. So if we bounce back, let's bounce back to that sheet real quick, Gareth, if you don't mind. Just that one off with Rob.
I'm going to make a copy of what this number is. So if you
Yeah.
can change it.
Yeah, please do.
So we can remember.
Yep.
Again, I'm just using Excel's functionality, which is great.
Yep. So now when we jump over to Robert De Niro and we're working on our staff to make changes and we terminated him and we calculated that through, we know that that number is 158,000 for Robert De Niro. It's actually processed itself automatically back to the income statement. It has actually done all the transaction work for you. So you don't have to worry about some sort of copy and paste. How do I do this? How do I get this across? No linked workbook, no such thing in our world. Right? No linked workbook, no VLOOKUP. It's all automatically processing through. So if Gareth puts him back, let's go and put him back. And we recalculate. And now we jump back over to our income statement. You're going to actually see our income statement change. Whoop, and there it is. So automatically, as we work through those things, when you set up our submodules, for anything you want. You can do that on the sales planning side. You could do that on the CapEx side. You could do that for your HR side, for when you're terminating employees or bringing them through. This is more information that you have. True collaboration. So now as you're learning this stuff, you now have a great understanding when you're working, like, okay, I made these changes for my employees, whether I gave them raises, whatever it is. I don't have to worry about going back. And as all of you that are FP&A experts know, when you give them the Excel template and then you're asking them to do it, they've built up their own Excel file. Now they're copying and pasting information in to their comp line for their various employees. It's definitely wrong, and you guys wind up fixing. And what this does is it takes all of that guesswork out. They know that someone's terminating. They know that someone's going on a leave of absence, whatever it might be. The same goes for products, whether it was retail or anything that it might be. There could be an entire products submodule that's created that's driving that information, both on the expense and the revenue side. What's our cost of goods sold to make those products, and how much revenue are we getting from distributing those products? And they can be a completely separate workbook in the hands of a completely different other individual who's then driving that information forward. So really important that I wanted Gareth to show that to you this morning. Let's go back, Gareth, to Washington, and because I want to touch, I certainly want to move to the forecasting side now, so that we can kind of show the group the forecasting, and then I owe them the explanation of analysis and insight. So I want to make sure that we cover those items.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what we wanted to just also point out is that I'm showing you an example of manipulating one individual, but obviously the tool is calculating every single member of staff simultaneously and instantly. And so what we could do, if we're going to ask a budget contributor to assist, we're going to give them something like this, a big long list, where they are going to just run down their staff. They're going to say who's taking a leave, who's leaving us, who's getting an increase, who's taking additional benefits, and really simple little pieces of data that they're going to pass to us, and the model's going to do all the hard work for us.
Got a great
All
team
right.
there.
Yeah,
So I was,
a lot
John,
of
I think we
Academy
were
Award winners.
yeah. So I think we wanted to start here, right? And say,
yeah, so let's go. So the base of our pyramid was management reporting, right? So if we're taking a look at management reporting, and all of us Excel people that are out listening and watching today are used to this. This is nothing but an actual versus budget report that's kind of showing your income statement. Very basic for today's demo. You'll notice up in Gareth's filter box that this is for the entire company, right? So all offices, all departments, and it's right now done at year-to-date April. So I'm looking at this information and I'm investigating something, and sales and marketing looks a little off. Like if I'm looking at sales and marketing, it doesn't look exactly the way I would like it to be necessarily, but it's not off by much, $220, not that big a deal, right? So if I go and I say, you know what, Gareth, I want to get a little bit better detail. I want to understand this stuff by quarter. I can switch my months at any given time. Let's take a quick look at it by quarter. And again, this is just something that's set up.
I'm going to add one more month of actual data, John, because I had it on
Okay.
April, so I'm going to move it to May now.
All right.
So I'm going to say
Perfect.
quarter to date May.
Yep. So now we're looking at quarter to date May, and oh man, look at sales and marketing, big blip. Now let's go back to what I talked about earlier in the narrative. In the narrative early, I said the biggest problem we have is we bring this information together. We've got our budgeted information. We thought we were solid. And now you're trying to earn the trust of management reporting. You never get to do your analysis. Now, because you've got our tool, you can do this analysis. And so as you start looking at this variance, you're like, okay, what is this? Now, I'm going to take a time out. I'm not even going to ask Gareth how he did it. But if I go back to my day, this would be something that I would go to my ledger first and I would run a report from May, because I know the change happened. Notice how Gareth showed you April, then he showed us May. And all of a sudden, so the change happened in May, period. So now the first thing I can do with my tool is I can say to Gareth, just show me May, right? So Gareth shows me May. Now, if I go back to my life when I did FP&A, I'm going to look at this number and I'm going to go, holy crap, what the hell happened? Why do I have a $16,000 bump? And I'm going to go to my ledger, and then I'm going to run a report, and I'm going to try and look at invoices or something that occurred so that I can understand it. And then once I understand what came through for May on the actual side, I'm going to go, hey, these bills and everything else that got paid out looks like it's all right. There must be a mistake on the budget. Like somehow, maybe we did something wrong, like when we looked at the budget. And so now, and again, back to the old way, now I'm trying to cobble together something that someone put in. I don't have necessarily the line item detail, the things that we were showing you like with our products. I don't know. But those of you that were paying attention, you know that Gareth had a really high number intentionally, right? He had that $16,000 number in the conferences. Let's jump over to the income statement and let's talk about it like you're using our tool now. So I'm doing this.
Point one thing out for you, John.
Yeah, please.
And this was a real problem for me, and I'm sure it was a problem for a lot of FP&A people. But I saw the variance at the total level, but there's a lot of detail here. I'm going to be searching for a needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
But with our tool, I can just double left click on this, and I can drill down. And you might not see the number straight away until I put some formatting in it, but you can see that's one big number. Now I've already resolved my needle in the haystack problem, because I know that's the intersection I'm interested. That's the detailed department. So let's flip over to that now.
And by the way, that's a holy cow moment, because
Sure.
You did the same thing I did back in the day. How quickly could you have gotten to that number if it were the old way and not our tool and just the old Excel stuff? You'd have been piecing through tabs and doing a bunch of lookup, going crazy trying to find that answer that you literally just found with a drill down. So it's a game-changing moment. And when you come back to the income statement, because you still have to look at the budget side. So I'm looking at my actuals and I'm going, okay, I did something, but why is my budget off so dramatically? And it's funny, those two numbers look kind of similar. And I built this budget up by line. So for my line item detail. So now when I come over and I look at this, I can pull my actual version, right? Or my forecast, which is going to show me my actual and my budget. And I can look at this and go, oh, we must have paid the bill for the conference early. What, I mean, are you going to 2 conferences? Now, because I'm working business partnering, maybe I call Gareth on the phone. Yo, are you going to 2 different conferences? Because in your budget, you got 16 grand in June. Oh, no. I had to submit that invoice, and I guess Mary and payables must have paid it. Oh, hey, can you go back into your line item detail and zero that out in your forecast? Because we're getting a huge discrepancy and I've got to get the numbers reported. Oh yeah, no problem, John. Let me do that for you real quick, which is what Gareth has just done. Once you do that, I've reforecasted appropriately. I've got the right numbers. I can go back to my management reporting. I can look at my information and I could say, okay, now, before, what you would have done is you would have submitted this to senior leadership. You'd have said, yeah, I have it. They would have been questioning you. Now you've got the answer before you submit it. You've made the change and you've gotten everything to do what you needed it to do before you ever showed this to senior leadership. So now back to that trust factor. You've taken care of the management reporting side. You've taken care of the budgeting side. And now even on the working forecast, let's jump back to that income statement, Gareth, and just so that we can see this and show it to our watchers. We've got 5 months of actual and the rest is our built out forecast. So if we know that something is changing, and if you go backwards to, we just did a really hyperbolic example to show it to you. But if I'm now a collaborator and I'm looking at something like this all the time, I would have seen that same blip that Gareth and I just showed, first. I would have seen it first, and I would have called John first instead of waiting for John to call me. I'd have said, hey, they paid the bill in May. My forecast has it in June. Now we're double dipping. I'm going to go make that change. Don't submit anything. And Gareth would say, no problem. Go ahead, make that change. Tell me when you're done. It's going to push through. I'll refresh and I'm done. So you're looking at your working forecast. And similar to the budget, if you want to make changes, we've got the accelerators or the spread methods that allow you to make those changes to build up that forecast. And so now you've built that trust on the forecasting side. Your collaborator now knows how to do this. We all know we're speaking with the same voice. Your boss, the senior leaders, those guys are happy, but they hate what they're looking at, right? I don't know how many are nodding along with, we love Excel so much and they hate it. They hate it with every fiber of their being. So, okay, well, like I said, and let's close the loop. And unfortunately, where I say no grand reveals, let's have a big old grand reveal, Gareth, and let's show Power BI and let's say, hey, here's Power BI. Here's what senior management wants to look at. Here's how they want to make decisions on things. And they want to look at our total revenue for the year and they want to go, okay, we're at 15 million. And they want to understand what's going on and see real-time info graphically. So we're going to do another hyperbolic example for you guys, and we're going to show you just how quickly you can have actionable insights in the palm, literally, of executive leadership. So Gareth, let's just put in something like really ridiculous. All right, let's drive the number for our viewers.
I'm putting in 3 million here just to make it move the needle, really.
Perfect.
Yep. So that's going to push our revenue right up. We come to Power BI. I'm going to do a manual refresh. This will be normally kicked off automatically. And we're just going to, Power BI is now reaching out to the central engine and it's grabbing that data and it's going to update all of these graphs for us.
Wow.
Here we see that December. So
and there it is.
This is really difficult, John, is that to get data from Excel into Power BI in a kind of real automated way, it's pretty difficult. This makes it really nice and simple so that your contribution to forecast is now being captured in this visualization tool as well.
So we don't want to diss our IT people that are watching this webinar. What we want to do is empower them. And the one thing that I learned when I was running IT in my previous life was the thing that IT hates is report requests. They don't want to build Power BI if they don't have to, and they certainly don't want to learn the coding and the aggregation behind it. So to empower finance with a single source of truth and allow them to be able to get that information that really requires no IT intervention, no builders and developers, is another game changer when you're looking at our product. Seamless integration kind of across the board. So on my side, Jess, I'm going to turn it back to you because I think Gareth and I have done a fair job of closing the loop from what we talked about in our narrative. To begin with, we've got the business partner in the middle who's collaborating on the budget. We showed you how the forecast can change. We showed you how you can analyze and look at that data quickly, which goes back to my first comment on collecting, gathering, and analyzing for insight. And now we're showing how the executives are seeing that same information and they're able to make decisions real time based on what they saw. So let me turn it back to you. I'm sure there must be some people with some questions.
Okay, fantastic. Before we move to the questions, I'm going to go ahead and share our poll results for everyone because I know it's kind of fun to see that stuff. So I'm going to share our first poll, which was about the pain rating for FP&A and specifically actually for Excel. So how do you rate your Excel pain? And we had most people right in the middle where like they don't love it, but when we had some people saying seemingly endless log and Excel hell. So we do have people on the call in pain, and we have people who are maybe not in that much pain as far as Excel goes. So that's interesting. Thank you guys all for sharing. And the other one I will share as well. Oh, you know what? I'm having a little technical difficulty right now. I'm not sure. I might still have it launched or something. So give me a sec to figure that out. And I'm going to go ahead and move to the Q&A. So if you would like to ask a question, please submit a question on the bottom bar for Q&A, and that's where I can see them easily. The first question was, what if you want to have different versions? Or they saw the filter that was version, and I think they're wondering about that. So if you could just talk a little bit about the version filter.
Sure. I mean, you can have as many versions as you like. You can see in this model, I have a new forecast for each month, and it'll bring in in this particular naming convention. This is actuals up to April, actuals up to May, actuals up to June, and forecast for the rest. But you can have unlimited, and sometimes you want to have a budget, a stretch budget, second version of the budget, or whatever. It's very, very simple to add, and it's very easy to copy the data over from one version to another, so that everything is seamless and easy to manage.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, and we have one more question here, which was related to the integration. And they're asking, does that integrate both ERP and Power BI?
Want to take that, John?
So we can integrate to pretty much any single solitary source system whatsoever. The Power BI integration, for lack of a better term, is really a data connector. It's a way to connect our data to Power BI to be seamlessly integrated with it. You can't name an ERP system probably that's out there today. So we've been around for 27 years. We have probably integrated to every ERP system that you could potentially think of. So kind of been there, done that. Integration takes a little bit of our understanding. We've got different types of tool sets. So for a smaller type ERP like Xero or SAP Business One or QuickBooks Online, we can have you up and running inside of a day. For a more complex, larger implementation or ERP system, there's usually a little bit of scoping from us to understand what you're trying to connect to and what you want to bring across. Once we understand that and build it out one time, then everything's pretty much automatic and updating whenever it is that you want to.
I just want to jump in real quick. I shared this slide, which is like not necessarily comprehensive, but more an example of how we can integrate with different things. And actually the integration, you guys can probably see I'm sharing the poll, was a hot item as far as what was interesting to the people on the call, which is great. I love collecting data like this because you don't always know exactly. You think you know. I thought this FP&A tool inside Excel was going to be very interesting. So cool. Thank you guys for sharing your data with us, or sharing your insights with us, and participating in the poll. And that is about it for today. If anybody has any final questions, you can drop them in the chat and right now, and we'll try and get it to it. Otherwise, I'm going to just let this slide hang up here for a moment. You can scan that QR code if you're interested in talking with John or or Gareth further. You can book a call with us there. So thank you guys all for spending some of your morning or evening with us. We are so happy that you were able to join us, and we hope to connect with you soon.